So the question of who gets to decide what is offensive and then what should be done about that can be a contentious one. So partly this comes back to the issue of the power of language and intention. If I wasn't intending to offend someone, but they felt offended by what I said, who's right? Should their sense of offence overrule my lack of intention in what I was doing? So as I say, it can be a contentious issue because of things like this. The other issue then is who gets to regulate it, especially when a lot of this happens on social media.
In terms of the law, there isn't necessarily a concept of offence, and so it's not a criminal offence per se to be offensive to someone. There might be circumstances in which there are additional elements of the behaviour that do mean it crosses the line. For example, sending material that's grossly offensive, or hate speech is involved, or the behaviours in a public place, and might intimidate or threaten bystanders.
When people first started worrying that technology itself was in some way causing or exacerbating social problems, the initial reaction was to look for tech solutions, look for ways that the technology itself could resolve the issues that it was producing. But one of the big problems with this is firstly the scale on which it happens on something like Twitter or Facebook or any of the social media sites. The amount of communication, the amount of traffic is so much that a group of people themselves can't monitor it. It needs to be monitored by the technology. But at the same time, there are limits on what technology can do, especially when it comes to identifying issues within communication, mainly because technology is not particularly good at reading context.
I think broadly speaking, there are three things they should be doing or doing better. Firstly is promoting a more courteous environment on their platforms, encouraging people to consider the language that they use, to have an open mind, to be tolerant. Secondly, reporting systems could be improved. The constant criticism we hear is that I've reported this to a social media platform and I haven't heard back from them, or you can just click a flag. You can't explain why the problem, why the post is causing problems and the nuance of it. And then thirdly, technology in terms of platforms proactively looking for offensive content on their site. So do you think we need a regulatory system? I think it would be quite easy in theory to implement one. I would set up a new discrete regulator.
I used to support the criminalisation of homophobic hate speech, but then I saw the way it was often misapplied. So, for example, Christian street preachers who were not inciting violence or being abusive to gay people were being arrested. And as much as I disagree with them, in a free society, they have a right to hold their opinion. My argument was, let's challenge them, let's protest against them, let's show them why they're wrong, but don't take them to court. Don't treat them like criminals for simply having a different point of view.
I think that rather than saying that the disruptive thing is always the person who says there's a problem, is that we need to work out a way to bring both parties together, hash out some kind of resolution. And yes, sometimes that resolution is painful.
So I think the reason why all this is important is that ultimately it's about cultural norms. And by arguing, or rather by debating what counts as offensive and what doesn't, this is a way of working out those cultural norms and resolving what type of society we want to live in. And this is ongoing. It's not something that you decide and then it's set forever, but it's a very important issue. The notion of offence sets the limits of what we think is acceptable and also what we should be doing about things which aren't acceptable. And this is why offence culture is so closely related to issues of free speech, because ultimately, if we can talk these things through and find ways to resolve them which doesn't involve too much state intervention, then we have a healthy democratic society which is able to deal with its issues, problems, and deal with the way things are changing without resorting to actual violence.
Get more from the Open University. Check out the links on screen now.